Are Mercedes genuine parts junk or not? Every so often I hear this question from people: are the newer parts that Mercedes is producing low quality, or are they just as good as the original parts? And this is a very important question, because what I see here is an argument that could take two sides. The first side is that there's no way they could be just as good, because the molds and engineering and the factory applications that they should be tested on, and then the level of quality control, is not going to be the same as when the car was new. The other camp would say, well, manufacturing processes are improving, and so is the quality of material used and the longevity of certain materials. And there's no reason why we can't make the part today better, lighter, cheaper, faster than we could 35 years ago. Finding a common ground between these two arguments is a huge challenge, because on one hand, there's nothing like being able to test the part on its original application. On the other hand, there's always room for improved efficiency. A great example of where we're seeing a lot of problems on modern parts could be with the reproduction parts that Mercedes sells. Well, they're reproduction, but they're made by Mercedes or by a Mercedes authorized supplier. But the modern production parts for the 190 SL carburetor flange, where the carburetor bolts up to the intake, as soon as these guys get a whiff of ethanol, they turn into mushy rubber spaghetti, and then they start to leak. This is a great example of how, because nobody is actually testing these things on the actual application, we don't know whether they work or not. But I'm not the first person that has come forward and said that the sealing rubbers between the carbs and the intake on a 190 SL are not very good. Another great example of an area where Mercedes parts quality could be improved to a certain degree would be with, and by the way, there aren't that many of them, would be with their fan clutches. So the V8 fan clutches that you buy for a 119 engine or a 117 engine, and they're different part numbers, just so you know, seem to come from the factory dramatically underfilled with oil, and they don't do an effective job cooling the engine off. And I had this happen a couple years ago with the 500E, where the Mercedes fan clutch, which is only about 5 years old, just would not keep the engine cool. And I had to track down a German-made ACM fan clutch, which is a different clutch, that did a better, more effective job keeping the engine from overheating. When we did some further research, we found out that the silicone oil levels in these fan clutches were too low, and they simply did not have enough oil to create the visco couple that they needed. So this was a case of manufacturing oversight rather than parts control failure. But being somebody who uses a lot of genuine Mercedes parts, I mean a lot, 80% of my parts content is genuine Mercedes. That's why when I send people an estimate, the estimates are so expensive, because Mercedes genuine parts cost a lot more than a lot of other stuff out there, and in my opinion, and based on the empirical data I've collected, they are worth the extra money. They may not be worth the extra money to a do-it-yourselfer, but they're worth it to me, because I have to carry the responsibility of the labor warranty for that part. And what I don't want is to try to save the customer 30% in a part and then have to go back and do the labor for free later. It doesn't work out very well for me. I can't be here. Now, one of the issues that I've run into with newer Mercedes parts is this sort of weird, maybe it's not weird, but this sort of bizarre problem where I find that the fitment may not be quite as good as it was when the parts were original. And this is a common issue with door and trunk seals. If you've ever put a genuine trunk seal on a Pagoda or a 108, you really have to slam the door because the rubber's too puffy. If you change your door seals, you really have to slam the door or close the door harder, because rubber's puffier, you know. So there are some issues with the manufacture of these parts. We've run into other weird problems too, such as rear window seals in the 114 and 115 early cars not fitting as well, or problems with, let's see here, problems with the felt on the modern production sunroof side seals on, let's say, a car that was as old as a 108 or as new as a 123 pulling off. But these are some notable exceptions. By and large, I've found in my own observation of the facts that genuine Mercedes parts offer a higher level of quality and longevity than 95% of the, well, let's say in the 5% there's Bosch, but 95% of the other manufacturers. That other 5% margin where they're equal or comparable has to do with some very specific cases from Bosch, which involve things like gasoline fuel injectors or electrohydraulic actuators. But 95% of the time when you buy a Mercedes genuine part, you will see a statistical improvement in the longevity of the part, the quality of the function, and the excellence of the part's fit. And that's why I will under no circumstances use aftermarket parts when I'm doing things like rebuilding a front suspension or replacing a steering coupler or replacing a tie rod, unless it's like an NOS German tie rod, or replacing the seals on a transmission, or replacing the rear axle bushings in a W108, because I know in 10 years I'll look under there and I'll say everything still looks great. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And if you're supporting us on Patreon, please please continue to do so. And we really appreciate you. And I hope to see some of you at Amelia Island. Thank you, and enjoy working on your classic Mercedes Benz with genuine Mercedes parts.